Yo, what is up guys? It is your boy Zeta here, back at it again to drop the finale for What If Deku Had the Speed Force. Now, I know many of you guys commented down below, as I told you guys on the last part, hey, comment down below what suit upgrade he should get next, whether it should be Godspeed or Zoom, but I decided to just keep the normal Flash, seeing as it is based on a Flash story. So if I was to give him the Zoom costume or the Godspeed costume, it kind of wouldn't make sense. That being said, I'll probably make a What If Deku Was Zoom, or What If Deku had Zoom's power sometime soon, and it'll definitely be a villain What If. It'll be fire. All I know is it's going to be something about a prejudice towards metas, and that just sounds like a fire What If. So if you guys want that, you guys have to smash 500 likes on this part to let me know you guys want that. However, with that being said, Izu is going to be taking over the first portion of the video. That being said, Izu, hit it.
So we're going to pick this up off exactly where Zeder left it, with Izuku coming first in the sports festival, and Midnight this time hands him his medal because, if you forgot, All Might died. Rest in peace. But they were not going to dwell on any deaths because Izuku came first and he's going to celebrate with Caitlyn, Cisco, Momo, Harry, and Iris, just everyone. They're going to go and celebrate for a bit. And when he goes to Star Labs, Harrison Wells gives him a massive hug and congratulates Izuku on his win, and he was taken aback by this because he never knew Harrison Wells to be this friendly. And for the rest of the day, they had an amazing night, and that being said, Deku would be going to school the next day, and while he's walking to school with Momo, he sees a mugger robbing this old lady, trying to rip her purse from her arms. And Izuku, seeing this, just gets angry, like, how can you stoop this low to rob from the elderly? And Izuku was mad. He rushes in, legit blitzing in there and beating him before he had a chance to even process what was going on. Izuku would then bind the mugger by his arms and legs and take him to one of the local police stations. You know, he super speeds there and super speeds back to Momo, and they continue going to school. But the mugger, when they throw him into a jail cell, one of the quirk cancelling jail cells, because they don't know what quirk he has, he could be dangerous, and when the guy wakes up, he's still able to use all of his quirks and his abilities, and that's bad because it's supposed to be quirk cancelling. So they send him off to a research lab to study him, and after doing multiple tests and referencing quirked people, they realize that this guy was quirkless before this certain date. So the researchers went to look like what happened, what significance happened on this date, and they found that was when the accelerator happened, and they realized quirk people weren't affected, so there's probably hundreds of others who got a new power recently, and they don't think it's weird. They don't think they're special at all. They just got their quirk early, like they were a late bloomer. But if any of these people are villains, that could be bad for their entire prison system, because the prison system is structured around the technology of cancelling quirks. So if they're not able to do that, then they can't take down these villains. And one of these researchers in particular had a connection with Star Labs, and this researcher knew that if he could get into contact with them, they could probably be the best to develop this team of heroes to combat against these new villains, these metahumans. So back with Izuku in class, and Aizawa, he comes and reveals all of the internship requests, and Izuku has over 1,000 requests, and Momo has a close amount to his. She has 800 and a bit. But the number doesn't really matter too much because they choose the same internship. They intern with the same person, Harrison Wells at Star Labs. So Izuku and Momo head over, and when they arrive, they see this group of researchers leaving the building, and when they walk in, Harrison Wells sees them and says, "Oh, you guys just arrived just in time." And the both of them look at Caitlyn and Cisco wondering what's going on, and they made a gesture to just listen to what he's about to say. So he explains the whole issue with the metahumans and how he's going to form Team Flash with Izuku, the leader of the team, hence the name Team Flash. So during his internship with Harrison Wells, Izuku would come across a lot of iconic villains from the CW Flash series like Leonard Snart and the guy with, telekinetic abilities, cloning, the mist poison guy, bro. I barely know any of their names, but you know who I'm talking about. He comes across them and completely annihilates them. They don't even stand a chance because Izuku is only getting faster as the series goes on. And in the middle of capturing one of those villains, Hosu City is attacked by the League of Villains. And when he hears about this, Izuku, he's putting two and two together. He remembers Ida being on the phone and he was crying. Like back at the sports festival, he saw Ida crying and he heard later on that his brother was attacked by the hero killer Stain, and the city Stain is most active in is Hosu City. So Izuku is hoping that Ida doesn't be an idiot and go after the hero killer by himself, but we all know Ida, he is an idiot. So Izuku arrives on scene with Momo and they split up to take care of the Nomu scattered around the city. And Izuku, he would use his super speed, like his punch with the super speed, to completely just take care of these Nomus. Just punch them in the head, that's where they regenerate from, so that would just negate their regenerative ability. So after going around for a bit, Izuku has saved a lot of people and he's really unintentionally made himself famous around these parts in Hosu City. So this may or may not come back later, but Izuku goes around and he finally comes across Native and he's crawling out of an alleyway, and Izuku runs up and says, what happened? And Native says, that kid with some engines, he protected me. And Izuku's like, wait, engines? Wait, it must be Ida. So he looks up into the alleyway and he sees a sword being held to Ida's throat. And Izuku immediately rushes in and punches the hero killer Stain off of Ida, and he crouches down to Ida and says, are you stupid? Why did you try and take him down by yourself? And Ida said, stop, I can take care of this by myself. And Izuku, he knows that Ida is stubborn, so he's not going to even argue with him. But as he's talking to Ida, the hero killer Stain recovers and he says, you have the audacity to turn your back to me? And he runs towards Izuku, and as he's about to hit him, his sword phases right through his body, and Izuku speed blitzes behind the hero killer Stain and then punches him rapidly, like 100 times in less than a second. And this causes the hero killer Stain to drop down unconscious and leaves Izuku time to save Ida, Native, and to take in the hero killer Stain. And he has super speed. He does this really quickly. He takes him to a hospital, takes him to the jail. Simple stuff. After the Hosu incident, the press got onto this story saying how UA is allowing its students to fight these dangerous villains because Izuku was caught on camera saving Ida and Native from the hero killer Stain. So right now tensions are high, but they have to restart the school, so they do. And when they come back, they want to test the students on what they've learned over their internship period, so they have the rescue training race. So everyone is at school and they go to one of the mock cities in their hero costumes, and Principal Nezu is hidden somewhere in the city and it's their job to find him. So the class split up in groups of 5 and each member of the groups would race against each other. So Izuku's group would consist of him, Ojiro, Sero, Mina, and Froppy. And come on, if you have Flash and a race in the same sentence, the Flash is going to beat everybody in that race. So it wasn't even a competition, to be honest, for first place. It was just a competition for second because Izuku 100% takes first. So he does it in literally less than 3 seconds to find Nezu. And Nezu is not even impressed at this point. This is just the norm for Izuku. So they just wait until everyone else catches up, and then the other group goes, then the other, and they return to class. Aizawa does a regular day of teaching, but at the end of it, he tells them about their final exams. And hearing the word exams, people start stressing out so much, like they're starting to plan how they're gonna study, while people like Momo and Ida, they don't have a problem. So without getting into too much detail, they all go off and study for a week or so, and when they come back to school, they do their final exams. Most of the scores don't change except for Izuku's, who is really high. Like Momo and Izuku top the intellectual part of the final exams, like the written parts. Momo getting first because she is smarter than Izuku, and Izuku coming in second. And the next stage of their exams is they have to fight, but not only do they just fight robots because that's what they heard from class 1B, but they have to fight their own teachers in groups of 2. So it was Momo and Izuku versus Ectoplasm. And with Momo's and Izuku's brains on a team and his quirk, well, not really quirk, but his abilities, this is a surefire win. They don't really have to struggle that much because Izuku just speeds to the gate and that's really it. They win. And after everyone goes, after they finish up their exams, people like Sato and Kirishima, they're worried because they lost, so they won't be able to go to the forest with the rest of the class. But Aizawa tells them that they can, they just have to do extra work. So they do feel a bit better, but extra work is extra work. So they all get about a week break until the forest training arc. And during this break, they just all go, they prepare for, the forest. They have to buy like bug sprays, different types of clothes. And since they had some time to settle down, Izuku and Momo got busy. Busy shopping, bro. Get your mind out the gutter. So after all the preparations are made, UA sends its students away to the training camp over their summer break. Because of the growing threat of villain attacks like the USJ and the Hosu incident, they want them to be prepared. So students need to be able to defend themselves from potentially more villain attacks and to get stronger to be able to acquire their provisional hero license in the future. So the bus ride was really long, to the point where Momo fell asleep and just laid on Izuku's lap almost the entire time, and Mineta is looking like, "You're so lucky, Izuku. I wish I had a girlfriend like that." So after about 6 hours, the bus finally arrives at this cliff and Izuku shakes Momo awake, and they get outside the bus and start stretching, and they start looking around and they're like, "Aren't we supposed to be at the camp?" And Aizawa walks out of the bus and he says to his students, "Well, we are here." And out comes the wild pussycats, Mandalay, Pixie Bob, Ragdoll, and Tiger. And instead of talking to the students explaining what they're gonna do at the camp, Pixie Bob and Mandalay task the students with making their way to base camp by fighting through the forest, against Pixie Bob's Earth Beasts. And as the avalanche is coming down, Izuku speeds and grabs Momo and they zip off to the base camp. And everyone has to spend over 8 hours fighting off Pixie Bob's monsters. So Izuku and Momo, they're at camp and they start cooking up some food. So an hour when Aizawa and the Wild Pussycats arrive, they're surprised to see them here. But Aizawa realizes, oh, that's Izuku. And, Mandalay and Pixie Bob, they're asking what's his abilities. And Aizawa says, oh yeah, super speed. He probably picked Momo up and they just ran all the way here within a second. And Mandalay, hearing this, she's grown very curious of Izuku and his ability, but she can't really get too personal because Izuku is guarded by his girlfriend. So they all start cooking up some food, and 8 hours later when Class 1A finally arrives, they are exhausted, they can barely even walk. And when they came out of the forest and see Izuku and Momo just sitting down chatting, they get so mad, but they can't really do anything. They are actually tired. They couldn't even attempt fighting either of them, plus they made them some food so they can't be too mad. So after that night, Izuku meets Kota and they start off with a really bad relationship. Kota tries kicking him in the balls, but Izuku, that's not gonna happen to him. He is way too quick. So Kota just runs away because he didn't get to actually do it, and now he's embarrassed, and Izuku doesn't really care. So after everyone eats, they shower and they head off to sleep because they have a long day of training tomorrow. So on the first day of the training camp, Shota brings his class to a cliffside and has Bakugo throw a ball with his quirk like he did during the quirk apprehension test. And to everyone's shock, Katsuki only managed to throw the ball only a few meters further than he did during the fitness test, despite so much time having passed since then. So Aizawa explains that the students have improved through technical skill, stamina, and mental prowess, but their quirks have not improved all that much. So later that same morning, Vlad Kings wake up his students and explain that they will improve their quirks by pushing them beyond their limits. And for day 2, that's entirely what they do. Like for Todoroki, he had to sit in a hot bath and shoot out fire and ice, while People like Sero had to shoot out his tapes constantly. Just, things like that they had to do for the entire day. And when day 3 rolls around, they have to do the test of courage in the afternoon, and this is where everything goes south. This is when the Vanguard action squad arrives. And I shouldn't really say everything goes south because these guys, they are mopped up by Izuku. Like for instance, the guy with the bunch of teeth and they're like blades, Izuku just comes in and punches him with super speed, breaking all of his teeth. And he does that repeatedly until the guy's down for the count. And he does this for basically everyone there. But something he wasn't expecting was the leader of the League of Villains himself. Not Shigaraki, the false leader. I mean, well, it depends on how you look at it, but I mean, it doesn't really matter all that much. So, All For One, he comes out because he sees all of his subordinates being taken down with relative ease, and he comes and faces Izuku. And Izuku is like, so you want a piece of this as well? So he runs in and tries to punch All For One over and over, but nothing happens. And similar to one of Overhaul's lackeys, he had force field quirks, so he put barriers upon barriers, not just one, there were like 10 duplicated in front of each other, and Izuku, he tries running in and punching the barrier over and over, but nothing happens. And Izuku thought this wouldn't really be the end for him and his entire class, and soon Izuku realized All For One was similar to him. He had tapped into the speed force as well. So All For One was taking Izuku down, like beating him down with all of his quirks, and Izuku couldn't do anything about it. And as he was on the verge of death, Izuku saw for a split second the streak of yellow in front of his eyes, and then this streak formed into the shape of a man behind All For One, and he said, "I can't let you do that. He's my ticket home." And he shoved his hand through All For One, killing him almost instantaneously. He throws All For One to the side like he was nothing but trash, and he stood over Izuku ready to deal with him himself.
Deku would crawl back as he says, It was you. The night that my mother died, that was you in the yellow lightning." As Reverse Flash would step over Deku, he would proceed to kick him straight in the ribs, shattering 3 or 4 of them. As Deku would scream out in pain, Momo would come running in and the Reverse Flash would go over to her. As he would proceed to stick his hand straight through Momo's chest, he would then give a smile right towards Deku's direction. As Deku would look at him and be like, no. This is when immediately the Reverse Flash would finish the job. And it's at this point that Deku would yell, "No!" As you can hear that all the way to the heavens, Deku would rush at the Reverse Flash as he would say, "How could you?" As he would simply smile and run away, as he would say, "It is not time for our race quite yet." As it's at this point that Deku would literally try to chase the Reverse Flash. However, when he tries, he would literally trip Deku, and as soon as Deku falls, he elbows him straight in the back of the head, knocking him out. Deku at this point would wake up about 2 hours later, and this is when he would wake up in a hospital. He's like, "Where am I? It was a dream." Everybody in the class would be looking down as they look at Deku, and Deku sees the condition that his body's in. He would say, no, this can't be happening. As everybody in the class just looks at him and says, "We're sorry we weren't strong enough to help you, Deku, but Momo, she's gone." Deku would hear that and immediately throw off all the equipment that's onto him. He would take out the IB and he would immediately just rush out of the hospital. As Deku would go for a run, he would just run in one straight direction, back and forth. He would just run at one straight direction. He would just keep running, trying to burn off as much steam as he possibly can. And Deku would just continue struggling with what he just saw, Momo's death. It would replay in his mind hundreds, no, thousands of times, and Deku would just not be able to wrap his head around this. It's at this point that Deku's tears would just start overwhelming him, and Deku would fall to his knees as he would slam his fist into the ground and say, "It's not fair. Why? He took my mom from me, my father, and Momo. What's he gonna do next? Take my father away?" As he would then think, "My father, Momo's dad, how are they?" As he would immediately rush over there, he would begin to run as fast as he can. And as Deku would run there, he would blitz faster than he's ever ran before. At that point, Deku would break the speed barrier and he would open a portal, which would lead him back in time by 1 day. And yup, you guys know exactly what's about to happen. Deku would go back in time, about 1 day prior to all of these events. And this is when Deku would rush outside as he would see himself and he would slowly start to disappear. Deku would simply just be like, huh? And it's at this point that Deku would basically just be right with Momo, as Deku would just gone to the bathroom real quick. Deku would see himself fade away. He would then realize what's going on, and it's at this point that he would look at Momo as he would tear up and hug her, and she would say, "What's going on?" Deku would look at her, she's just like, it's nothing. I can't believe you're still, as Momo would say, "Still what? What are you?" And Deku would say, "What day are we on?" As she would tell him that it's the same day that Momo died. Deku, after hearing that, would just say, "I must have traveled so fast that I opened a barrier between space-time, and I must have traveled back in time." Deku would have immediately put the pieces back together, and it's at this point that he would immediately go to Star Labs, as he would begin to tell Harrison Wells about everything that happened. He would tell him that he ran so fast he must have went back in time, and this is when he would proceed to tell Deku not to tell him anything that happened, as he would say, "You are going to do everything that happened on this day, and you are going to do it exactly as it just happened. If you change events in history, horrible things will happen, and the world and timeline will figure some way for everything to go back to how everything should have been." This is when Deku would say that that's not possible and that nothing bad will come from it. As he would smile, he would then race out of there, as Harrison Wells would just sit there and kind of facepalm, as he would take his glasses off and just be like, "That kid, I better stop him." He would immediately call him and tell him not to be hasty with anything and to do everything as he had told him, because one small change could change the entirety of the timeline. As Deku would just tell him that it was just a couple of hours, what big changes could happen. He would then say that, he doesn't understand how timeline works, and Deku would just say that he doesn't need to be babied. He's grown enough to make his own decisions. This is when Deku would proceed to basically just have the same events that happened during the daytime. He would proceed to have some food, and this is when during the nighttime they would basically proceed to have a little bit of a nighttime events. This is when the Vanguard squad would come, and Deku would, of course, just like in the original timeline, would proceed to just school all of them. He would, of course, take out Moonfish relatively easily. He would shoot his, razor sharp teeth at Deku, and Deku would basically phase through him, as he would go over there and uppercut him, sending him straight into a tree. As it's at this point that Deku would grab his limp body and smack him into Dabi, right into Dabi's flames. As Dabi would slowly burn him, Deku would then run over to Twice and say, "This isn't nothing. I've dealt with your kind before." As he would grab him and just knock him out, proceeding to as Dabi would basically proceed to turn into sludge, revealing that Dabi was what's his name? Mr. Dupe, the guy who can multiply. I forgot his name. I'm so dumb. But yeah, he would take him out immediately, and Deku would then be like, he was a clone. What? This is impossible. This is when he would basically proceed to look towards the other opponents, and he would knock out Dabi before he even knows what hits him. This is when he would proceed to take everyone else out, and this is when a portal would open, as Deku would immediately realize what's going on. Before All For One would even get the chance to even create his barriers, Deku would immediately blitz at All For One and completely just punch at the barrier and punch at All For One's mask, as All For One would get punched miles away. This is when All For One would stand back up. He would put over some barriers, and Deku would try to punch away. However, this is where I will be retconning something that Izukage said on his little portion of the video. On Izu's part, he ended up saying that All For One tapped into the Speed Force. However, he kind of messed up on what I told him was the explanation for quirks and metas. See, the way that things work is that quirk people genetically cannot develop metahuman abilities due to the fact that they already have a sort of kind of abilities. It would just not make sense for quirk people to also get metahuman abilities. That would just be, it's broken. Yeah, Deku could still handle it, but it's like, it wouldn't make sense, and that would probably alter the genetic code on like a horrible level. So the way that it works is basically, if you don't have a quirk, you have the potential to be affected by the dark matter, meaning that about half of the quirkless people were actually gifted with metahuman abilities, and like a giant percentage of them didn't do anything because, well, they live in a superhuman society. That being said, All For One is completely unable to access the Speed Force, meaning that when Izukage said he accessed that didn't really happen. All For One just whooped Izuku without having any of those like Speed Force abilities, but you know, All For One can still do that. He's pretty broken. I mean, Barry Allen lost to people who are just incredibly weak, and it just comes to show that super speed will not always secure you the dub. That being said, Deku would run away about 50 miles, as Deku would say that he's not going to let what happened to Momo happen today, as he would rush at him. He would literally break the space-time continuum and move as fast as Savitar, as he would punch straight through the barrier. It would be 20 barriers in his way, as he would shatter each and every single one of them, and quite literally penetrate straight through All For One's heart, as he would say that this time he's not going to weaken him, and this time he's going to stop the reverse flash, as it's at this point that he would arrive right behind Deku and go to hit him, but Deku would have been ready for this. He would dodge the attack and immediately punch him straight in the ribcage, shattering his entire left side. As the reverse flash would be stunned, sent straight to the ground, Deku would look at the reverse flash as he would say, "You're not going to kill her this time, or any time." As it's at this point that he would shove his hand straight through the reverse flash's hand and crush his heart. As the reverse flash would fade away, this is when Deku would say, "Now, let's see what you look like." As he would unmask the reverse flash, this is when he would see that it was Harrison Wells. They never ended up figuring out. Cisco never figured it out. He never turned into Vibe. Caitlyn never turns into Killer Frost, meaning that none of those other events in the original Flash story ended up happening due to the way that I will progress this story. That being said, after realizing that, Deku would have one more realization. He would fall to his knees as he would realize that he never got a confession from this man. Therefore, his father will be stuck rotting in prison for the rest of his life. Deku at that point would basically pass out due to exhaustion, and the very next day he would wake up and see Momo. As she would be right by his bedside, Deku would smile at her as he tells her that he's so glad to see her. This is when Deku would start crying and say that he took out the man who, wrongfully imprisoned his father, but he never got a confession. And Momo would get sad as well, as she would say that she understands how he feels. Deku would say that, she couldn't possibly understand, but he knows what she means, as he would basically give her a hug. Momo would give Deku the biggest hug and tell him that she understands how he must be feeling right now, and if he needs time, she can give him that. Deku would hug her tightly and say that it's not what he needs. What he needs right now is her. And it's at this point that he would go to Star Labs and tell Caitlyn and Cisco what happened. The events of the Force training arc would get covered up by UA due to the fact that if it doesn't get covered up, this would most definitely require the shutdown of UA. So that would happen. Therefore, nobody would find out that Deku killed 2 men that day. And that being said, this is when Deku would arrive at Star Labs, as he would see the message that Harrison Wells left to Deku, freeing Deku's father, Hisashi Midoriya. And this is when they would basically have the provisional hero license exams. Deku would be extremely happy to see his father once again, seeing as he just hasn't been able to spend time with him. He lost his father, and now that he's free, he's going to be spending as much time as he possibly can with his father. That being said, they would take the provisional license exam, and seeing as Deku quite literally has the ability to zoom through everything, including the nutty, Deku would proceed to, just obliterate everyone. And with that being said, the big 3 would be introduced, with Mirio, of course, walking in the crash room, just being like, "Hey, y'all trying to fight again?" As Deku would look at Mirio, he'd be like, you ready for that round 2? Mirio would be like, and then, wait, no, I'm thinking of Izukage's what if. Oh, I'm so dumb. I was thinking of Izukage's what if Deku was Kratos, because I watched that earlier. But anyways, enough plugging. I'll maybe link that right here on this point, or if not, you guys can just go watch it on your own time. That being said, Deku would basically look at Mirio and just be like, "Huh, it's gonna be pretty fun." as he would literally, instead, as soon as he starts fighting Mirio, he would just get whooped. And this is when Nejire would hop in and she would shoot energy beams at Deku. Deku would phase right through them and he would rush over to Nejire as Tamaki would he would basically turn into a centaur with like squid arms, and he would rush at Deku as he would kick him away. However, Deku would phase through him, grab him by the throat and throw him at Nejire. As Nejire would get caught off guard, Deku would start spinning into in a circle as he would throw a lightning bolt straight at Mirio. However, he would phase right through it, and Deku would get caught off guard with an uppercut from Mirio straight to the jaw. It's at this point that Deku would stop playing all these games, and he would ramp up his speed so fast that in an instant, all three of them would be on the ground, just completely bloodied and battered. Deku would stand there with a smile on his face, with Momo realizing that this dark aura to Deku. She would ask him what's going on, and Deku would say that he was just blowing off some steam. He still isn't over the death of Momo and the fact that the reverse flash ruined his life. And now that he knows he can time travel, he's been contemplating the thought of maybe going back to that night. However, he doesn't know what the ramifications would be. Maybe he might never meet Momo or something like that. However, Deku would realize that, he met Momo far before, so that's definitely a possibility. And this is where we're going to be ending off. What if Deku had the Speed Force? See, of course, some of you guys are probably going to be like, what about the Overhaul arc? And to that, I say, dude, Deku just blitzes Overhaul, bro. The second that Deku sees a girl in fear to a man who just ruined her life, he would see those eyes that Deku had when he saw his mother die that night. And Deku would show no mercy. Deku would quite literally blitz Overhaul and throw him in jail before Overhaul has time to react, shutting down his entire operation. And at this point, Deku would begin to contemplate whether he's going to go back in time. And this is where I'm going to be leaving off the series, due to the fact that I don't know whether this is where I'm going to be leaving everything off, or if I'm going to basically do a little bit of a flashpoint point of view where Deku goes back in time and we basically retell this entire story, me and Izukage, if he's down. And with that being said, that's basically where we're going to be ending What If Deku had the Speed Force. If you guys enjoyed this little series that we did, me and Izukage, definitely go check out his content, as well as subscribe, leave a comment down below, and let me know what you thought of the video. Did you like it? Did you not? Did you like the way that the quirk system and metahuman system worked? Did you like the characters that I added? And do you like my versions of storytelling? That being said, it has been your boy Zether, guys. I love each and every single one of you guys, and I am out. Peace.